Hello, Contrarians, watchers, listeners, subscribers. Here we are. Probably not too noticeable for you, but for Alex and I, it's been about a 3 week break since we did any sort of recording. And now we're here recording sort of face to face on our latest dual QVR, dual video review, courtesy of Jamie Russell, who wants us to talk about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, not the original, perhaps the first remake. Is there more than one remake? Now I'm doubting myself.
This is one from 1979, 78, excuse me, released on December 22nd, 1978, based on the 1955 novel The Body Snatchers that was previously adapted in 1956 to a film, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and one with James Bond and Nicole Kidman.
That's not even. They dropped everything but Invasion, right?
They thought it would just be much cleaner. I think
Yeah.
it's just literally called The Invasion.
All right. I know why I thought there were more. But no, this is not Little Women. It's just, there's just three. Well, that's cool. We're doing the one with Donald Sutherland, the one that you are probably aware of, even if you haven't seen the movie, because that's a big meme. Donald Sutherland pointing.
You were right, Julio. There was another one. I'm sorry to cut
Oh.
you off there. 1993.
So after this.
Yes.
All right. 50s, 70s, 90s. And I guess the Nicole Kidman one is like in the 2010s.
2007.
Years.
I was working at the theater when that came out. It did not do well at the Denton Cinemark.
Yeah, well, I still haven't seen it. I think I mentioned it to you. That's one of those that kind of like goes in and out of Netflix, and so whenever it comes back, it shows up on my list, and I never get around to it. This movie, Alex, I think I've seen it before, a long time ago when I was a kid, because I remember the ending, which I guess might be unfortunate. I think I have a pretty good idea of how everything ends in this movie, but I don't remember anything else. And maybe I'm misremembering the ending, but I think I have the context for that Donald Sutherland meme. How about you? What's your history with Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
I don't remember when, but I've seen this one at some point because yes, I know the context of the R.I.P. recently also Donald Sutherland. I remember the context of his horror.
Yeah, there's other than that, I think that the body snatcher concept, or like the idea of it's not just a meme. I think that it's part of the vernacular. I think in horror movies, like if you say what a body snatcher, you don't have to explain, I think, to most people what you mean, so and I'm assuming that it comes from this movie, like the book and its numerous adaptations. And so I know that we're getting into either a horror movie or a sci-fi horror movie, some sort of thriller, people being replaced by aliens. I think that that's what's going on.
The Wikipedia page for the novel cites The Faculty as like a version of a remake.
I mean, I guess we'll be able to know for sure once we're done with this movie, but I don't think so.
No, if you want to go that far, then you got to start talking about Halloween 3 being like an offshoot also.
I see that even less, but okay.
That's my point.
Yeah. I mean, I think I saw that Jeff Goldblum is in this movie.
Jeff Goldblum doesn't steal Stonehenge in this. And his plan isn't to murder all the children of the world in one night. Jeff Goldblum's in this, and it's easily the most famous of the adaptations of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Even though The Faculty or Halloween 3 or part of the inspiration behind Vincent D'Onofrio's character in Men in Black, that idea of like the recognizable body that's been inhabited by a force or a different species or something like that. It's a good basis. There's a reason it would still work today. If they just want to make, a body snatching type horror movie, it would still work. Once modern Hollywood gets over their massive boner for the twist being it was the devil, maybe they can just go back to some good old-fashioned body snatching horror. It's a good concept. It's timeless.
Bringing it back to Nicole Kidman, because I know that's what everybody wanted. The remake of the Stepford Wives. I mean, I know that's not aliens; those are robots. If you ever watched it, I haven't seen the original. I watched the remake, and it makes very little sense by the time it's all said and done. Because it's like, are they replacing the women in this town with robots, or are they turning the women into robots? And I guess that's my question here for the Body Snatcher movies. Is like, are they replacing them with like, is it a brand new, like, let's say, because I don't know for sure, but let's say Jeff Goldblum gets replaced. Is it just that an alien takes over his body, or is it that they take him and they replace him with a new Jeff Goldblum that's alien? So that is my big question going into this movie. And I hope it's answered more clearly than the Stepford Wives remake when it came to like what happened to Nicole Kidman. So,
I had to look it up because I was like, Animal House was 78 too, wasn't it? And it was.
also inspired by Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
No, but you get to see Donald Sutherland's ass in that movie. So my point was like, that's honestly one of the things I always think of when I think of Animal House, because it's one of my mom's favorite gags ever in a movie. Have you seen Animal House before?
Still not.
Okay, so Donald Sutherland is a professor that ends up like seeing one of his students. The whole payoff is like this guy's in the house. The ex-boyfriend of the girl is like, "You're with this guy now," and Donald Sutherland walks in. He's wearing a sweater, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And then he's like making coffee, and he reaches up to like the top shelf to get the sugar, or whatever, and the sweater comes up, and he's naked under it. And you just see Donald Sutherland's ass, and I like my mom, is in hysterics every time we watch that, and it gets to that scene. She thinks it's one of the funniest things. So, in 1 year, in a 6-month period, no less, we got Sutherland ass and the immortal meme of Donald Sutherland pointing in terror. So, 1978 was a big year for old D. Sutherland.
Yeah, that's what got him the role in Buffy.
Old Donnie. Yes. I was trying to think. Yeah, he's not a stranger to us here.
No, at the very least, Buffy. He might have popped up in a couple other things, minor roles. This might be the biggest Donald Sutherland movie we've done. We'll see. All right. So, do you have the data there? Do you know how long this is? Because I forgot to pull it up.
Hour and 55 minutes. I was thinking we could just stop it dead at an hour.
All right.
Check in there.
Then an hour you're doing, you said YouTube TV?
YouTube TV has it in the on-demand library, so I'll be watching it there. You said yours is on
Hoopla. So
Hoopla. It's on Tubi and Pluto TV. This is not a hard movie to track down.
All right. Well, no commercials for either of us, so I think that we'll be in sync. So we'll be back in an hour, and we'll see if by then we know at least what's happening. Are they replacing or are they taking over? If that question is answered, I'll be happy with the movie. And but I'll say, just based on what I think I remember, I don't think this is a happy movie. It's one of those like it's not a good ending. But maybe
like Halloween 3.
Yes, exactly. Just everything comes back to that. Yes. So we'll be back in an hour. See you then.
Now, the classic fear begins to grow.
We're being cornered.
In a modern masterpiece of science fiction.
They're barricading the street.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Get down!
Starring Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Leonard Nimoy.
All right, we are back, and it looks like we're still ourselves. As far as I can tell, Alex hasn't been replaced. As far as he can tell, I haven't, but maybe I have. I don't know. We're halfway through the movie, Alex, and
is your question answered? Are you on?
I think so, unless they changed, unless the second half changes what they've shown us so far. I think it's pretty clear that it's a replacement kind of thing. I don't know yet what happens to the people they're replacing. Like, what do they do with the real people after the
Where's the real Jeffrey?
Yeah. Where's the? He was an asshole anyway, so I mean, it's not a big deal. But I'm more concerned because Jeff Goldblum seems to be he didn't get the with or the and credit. He seems to be pretty early in his career, so I kind of feel like he's going to be the first casualty.
His loop is run too. They lost track of his duplicate. Leonard Nimoy just has no time for the premise of this movie. He thinks everyone's fucking stupid. He's like, this can't be happening.
Well, okay, so where exactly did you stop? Because I ran like an extra minute. I'm like at 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 minute and 40 something seconds. And that makes a huge difference.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm right at 1 hour. I stopped there when Goldblum stormed out of the apartment.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's where I should have stopped. But I was like, wait, but what happens next? And there's like one extra scene. So, well, I'll save my comment for that. But yeah, it's funny that Mr. Spock is the voice of reason in a way. But that makes it even, I mean, I was going to say makes it scarier, or maybe just as scary. The idea that you could have this widespread collective paranoia is almost as scary as the idea that you could have aliens replacing people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what if it's all just in her head? What if what's her name? Brooke Adams, Elizabeth? What if she is really just losing her mind? That is
Tony Shalhoub's wife.
Is she?
They've been married since 1992. I was looking up I was
Good
on her
on
Wikipedia
him.
page seeing. Oh yeah, for sure. She's a looker in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jeff Goldblum and his wife dealing with
Naked people.
yeah, that the mud baths and whatnot, but like finding the duplicate. But then also it's clear that dude who's reading the book with the beard there's something off about him, because she thanks him for bringing the plant.
Yeah. I think that as an invasion, it's both very subtle and very unsubtle. You know what I mean? Like they're being very conspicuous about the way that they gather, and also they just leave like they're dupes lying around.
Yeah, you know what we forgot to bring up too was The Happening. That was a movie that everyone knows the ending now, but like the idea of people aren't themselves anymore, like, and changing, and because the chaos that was like the scene of the guy jumping on the hood of the car, like they're coming for you, they're coming, and then that guy's dead immediately. And The Happening is certainly not a
good
body
movie.
swap. Yes, it's not a body switch type horror movie. But that was one I remember when it came out, people were wondering if it was going to be something like that.
Right.
It's not.
I think that maybe there is a vibe. Forget about what the exact problem is, but just the vibe of, oh, something is off with the world, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but I feel that something is wrong, which is obviously the big deal with Elizabeth early on. It's unnerving, and I like that. I was thinking, like, what is it like to watch this movie when it comes out, because it's a remake, and it's a remake of a movie based on a book. So I think that at the very least,
from 20 years prior,
right? But so do you think that at least half of its audience, like 50% of people going to see this movie, already know what they're in for from the beginning?
Well, things like Wikipedia and things like that weren't really available, so I'm sure there's a large part of the audience that went to see this in the theater had no idea.
They're just scratching their heads for an hour before they explain what's going on. Like, what's really happening?
Yeah, you're right. The whole movie's soaked in this, like, I don't use the word, not dread, but it's just very tense and uncertain. And like even the way it's shot, and like the scene of Donald Sutherland breaking into their home to try to help rescue Elizabeth is so like even if you've seen it before, it's like this movie's increasingly like walking on eggshells of just like, ugh. It's the uncertainty is the word I use. It's a feeling of like tension and uncertainty that just looms.
But it's titled Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So do you think that there are people going to see this in the 70s and going like do you think that there are people that are still thinking, 40 minutes in, they're thinking it could be all in her head, and the title is not being about a literal invasion, but just about what she's imagining?
Yeah.
That's wild, because obviously that is not an experience that we could ever have. When we sit down to watch this movie, we're like, of course it's aliens. We know from the very beginning. We there's no second guessing. We're just kind of like waiting for Donald Sutherland and Brooke Adams, somebody else to catch up.
Yeah, the way that opening is presented, also with like the fucking microscopic aliens wandering away from their home planet, you could easily just interpret that as like a dream she had or something like that. It's not like the beginning of Independence Day when the moon shakes and the footprints are erased.
Yeah, no, this is a lot more ambiguous. I think the thing is that Leonard Nimoy makes enough sense when he says, look, sometimes it's a lot easier to come up with this outlandish explanation because facing the truth is a lot harder. So you don't want to believe that you're falling out of love with your boyfriend. Instead, it's a lot easier to believe that somebody has replaced him, that he's not himself. I was like, man, I know what the movie's about, but he's making a lot of sense.
Well, yeah, but he's definitely got some stock invested in these aliens because he's just like, there's,
A little too certain.
yeah, he won't entertain it for a second.
It's like, you called me in the middle of the night. I just came here to give you my professional opinion.
He's, N95 masks won't work because he's. I'm trying to think of who he would back in that situation, but
He's Jude Law in Contagion.
Oh yeah.
Just whichever way the wind blows. So this is Donald Sutherland in, like, he got the doc credit,
Mm-hmm.
and then Nimoy got the and. That was
He did. The one thing I don't remember when I know I've seen this movie multiple times in my life. I don't remember when or how closely I was paying attention. I did not remember Spock having this big of a role in it, which goes to show you that this had to have been like childhood, teenage, staying up late watching horror movies on cable TV. We've talked about him before.
For
obviously.
Patron, we did. Well, I mean, he shows up in the Star Trek, the Abrams Star Trek that we did for the main feed, but also that we did Wrath of Khan. And
we did Wrath of Khan, but we also did.
Oh yeah, that's right. We did. I Need My Pain.
Need My Pain. Yeah.
Final Frontier.
Every time I watch him, I'm like, not financially because it worked out for him well with the Spock thing, but I think what we talk about in those episodes is like, he's like a good actor, and you just kind of wonder if he didn't get the role of Spock, what his career would have looked like. But again, I think he is
I'll tell you what my bank account would look like.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, be missing a few of those O's on the end of
it. Well, how about
his faces and you can just tell a different era of acting that guy was brought up through.
But you see him and you see Spock. That's the
that's
the
it.
thing.
Mark Hamill, like Leonard Nimoy's probably a better actor than Mark Hamill, but like, yes, to your point,
Mark Hamill just woke up in the middle of the night. It's like, what happened? Okay, but Donald Sutherland, I mean, he is 100% sold as the protagonist because he was there above the title. Before even we got the title of the movie, it was Donald Sutherland. This is a Donald Sutherland vehicle. Do you have that thing as well? Like, you see Leonard Nimoy and you're like, Spock. Do you see Donald Sutherland and you're like, it's Donald Sutherland?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Just, he may have like a kind of like a new hairdo kind of thing going in this movie, but it's still Donald Sutherland. That's not a bad thing. I mean, it works.
One thing I've always appreciated is they kind of do a good job of portraying how mundane his life is, and it allows you to understand why he gets so like immediately worst case scenario or so excited about what's going on. Like, yeah, because dude's fishing rat shit out of pots every day. This is a big happening for him.
Also, I mean, it doesn't hurt that he clearly has a thing for Brooke Adams. Like, and let me help you.
Can't blame him. Yeah.
It's like making food for her, they're having a picnic in the middle of the night out there.
Yeah. Like, stir fry. As someone who recently purchased a wok, I was kind of watching his technique. Brother needed some more seasoning in that bad boy, though. Breezy first hour. Just like I said, it has a good feel to it in terms of like the mood it establishes. But I think I checked the little time bar maybe twice. And I was like, because I wanted to make sure I didn't go too far. And I think the first time I checked it was like 45 minutes in. I was like, God damn, this thing's just flying by.
Yeah, me too. Because I forgot to set the timer, so I had to check so I could set my timer on my phone, and that was the only time I checked it. It's I wonder if it's going to pick up the pace in the second hour once we go into full blown invasion. We're gonna run away from aliens.
Jeff Goldblum gets him and Donald Sutherland get in the spacecraft and take the virus up to the headquarters.
Well, that's the thing. So this movie, it's already, because we're halfway through, you get that sense of like, there is no way that they can beat this, right? Save for something happening like an outside force, like a War of the Worlds, right? Oh, it was the bacteria killed the aliens, so something like that could happen. Listen, it worked back then. It's a little sillier now when you say it, but It was COVID. COVID killed the aliens.
Signs, water.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's a good recent example of this type of scenario where you put regular people in in a regular world. You put them in this very very difficult situation, and you're like, there is no way that they can, they can survive. We're gonna watch the movie like expecting them to kind of like run away, but how do you beat this? Like, I can't find like a rational way for them to beat it. It's not, it's like,
We
you find
also
an alien, you kill it, and everybody is suddenly free.
this also has like one of the more famously spoiled endings to movies, but that's only for like people like us that pay attention to that kind of shit. I wonder if you took like the youths that like, the long legs and like the horror movies of now so much. If you showed them this and you check in with them an hour in, one, where their patience would be at, and two, kind of like what they think could happen here.
They look up from their phone and it's like, oh, it's been an hour.
Yeah, they're like, well, it's just going to be the devil. That's going to be the reason in the end.
But look, in Signs, when you're watching Signs, right? They board up the house, they just stay in, and it's like you don't expect Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, and the kids to beat the aliens. You're just like, well,
yeah,
just gonna watch this until they get killed by the aliens, or something happens from outside. The military, maybe like
like the best moment of acting in that movie is when Mel Gibson thinks they're all going to die, and,
right?
And he's spending the last night with his family together. So
here, like, I don't, like I said, I don't remember, and I don't expect them to come up with a plan in the second half of the movie. I think that what's going to happen is they're going to confirm that these are aliens. They're going to confirm that what's happening, right? And then they're going to be like, well, I guess we run.
Donald Sutherland's going to be like, should we? To Brooke Adams.
Jeff is definitely out of the picture, so the birds, we talked about the birds maybe like a year ago on Patron, and same thing. It was like there's never a plan on how we stop this craziness with the birds. It's just like, let's try to get out of the city, and hopefully it hasn't spread all over the world.
Yeah.
So
I think for longtime listeners know famously I do not care for The Mist, but I know that was like part of that movie. Some of the characters were like, well, we just got to keep pressing on and get out of The Mist.
Great movie. Don't listen to Alex.
You're enjoying yourself so far, though, it sounds like.
Yeah. I'm having fun. I would say that even if I didn't know any of the actors, I would have fun. But there is an extra level of enjoyment when you're like, oh, Leonard Nimoy, Donald Sutherland, Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum. That's fine.
Oh, yeah, a young age. Handsome young man, too.
Yeah.
It's very important to call out, too, that there are elements you could perceive as campy about this, but the acting in it is not that bad acting that is funny to watch. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's this by no means is like a campy movie that its camp makes it like good, like a Friday the 13th or something like that. This is still like probably some like ways of shooting and presenting that are dated, but the acting is still on point. And Jeff Goldblum's level of like freaking out to me would be on par with how you would really react to that situation.
Yes. It's just that because it's Jeff Goldblum, it almost feels like, it's Jeff Goldblum. But see, back then they didn't know he was Jeff Goldblum. So
Goldbluming wasn't even a phrase. It wasn't a verb then.
Right. It was genius casting without it being a gimmick. It was just like, oh, let's just give this guy a shot. So that's cool. All right. So it's not looking good for anybody here. And again, we're just barreling towards that meme.
Fast forward to 2024 and not looking good for many of us. So
yes, I really, this movie is going to surprise me if anybody comes up with any sort of plan that goes beyond, let's try to get out of the city.
Just unpause it. It's Goldblum at like a blackboard, like making a plan.
Yes. All right, so we have about 50 minutes to go, assuming there's like 5 minutes of credits. So we'll be back in 50 minutes or so. We'll see you soon.
Or will we?
That's true. It may be different versions of us that come back, and we'll just point at you. We haven't gotten any pointing yet.
No, it's coming.
Yeah, I thought that by now we would have, but I guess it makes sense that that's more like on the back burner. We've gotten some creepy people looking around and just
Well, the DNC was tonight, so there's definitely been some finger pointing going on, but not on our screens yet.
On that note, we'll end this segment.
It's got no detail, no character. It's unformed.
All of a sudden, they're growing like parasites. Is it contagious? People are being duplicated.
How do you know my name? I didn't tell you my name.
Get you when you sleep. Sit up!
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
All right, we are back. We made it. We made it to the iconic.
I should have just come on here naked like Brooke Adams at the end, just pointing, and of course I am nowhere near as attractive as Brooke Adams, so
it would still be shocking.
Oh yeah.
We come back from the video.
This movie. Yeah, man, it's still we both know the ending of this, and it's legendarily spoiled, to a comedic degree, but it's a great ending. You still feel shit. What's the girl's name? The woman at the end, is it Anne?
Because Elizabeth is Brooke Adams.
Brooke
right?
Adams, yeah.
Nancy? Hang on, I wrote it down. Yeah, poor Nancy. I wrote.
Yes, Veronica
Nancy.
Cartwright. Yeah. You feel her pain and anguish. Also, speaking of names, I was looking at it as W.D. Richter that wrote the screenplay for this. I was like, why does that name sound familiar? It's because we recently discussed W.D. Richter in our Nickelodeon episode.
Was he the writer that benefited from Bogdanovich taking the blame for everything?
I guess so, because he followed up Nickelodeon with this. And then the 1979 Dracula. Is that the one with Frank Langella? I was trying to think of the Christopher Lee one came later.
Disgraced actor Frank Langella, yes.
Yes.
Well, I mean, good for him. That is, he wrote one of the most infamous movies in Peter Bogdanovich's filmography, and then one of the most revered remakes. I was going through the tomato meter quotes, just kind of to get a feel for what the critics were saying. And I would say it's a 50-50 within people that like it and say that it's not as good as the original, and people that like it and say that it's better than the original.
I'd like to watch at this point, I'd kind of like to watch them all, just to, like Pokemon, collect them all. But
even Invasion.
I don't even know how Pokemon works, but I know that's the thing. Yeah, all of them. The OG, the 93 one, and Invasion also, just to kind
Daniel
of
Craig.
Oh. Dude, that'd be awesome. But he's smoldering when he does it because he's so handsome. But yeah, this is definitely the most famous and the most well regarded.
Yeah, that seemed to be the case. It's I took a screenshot of it. It's 93%, I think, on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, 93%, 82% audience score, and they have Jeff Goldblum as the picture in the background, like he was the main character.
Yeah.
Well, I told you, I was pretty sure I'd seen this before, and I had. The only thing I remember was the ending, to the point that I thought that the woman that he was pointing at the end was Elizabeth. So when Brooke Adams doesn't make it, that threw me for a loop, because I thought that she was going to be the final girl. Didn't expect Nancy to, because she's very much of a side character. And even though in retrospect, it kind of makes sense. She was perhaps the most paranoid out of them all. So of course she made it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Kind of a rookie mistake though, at the end, for her to really lower her guard, knowing the stakes, knowing that she doesn't know if Donald Sutherland has been trapped by the pod people. She was even more cautious when she runs into him and Elizabeth, kind of like at the beginning of the third act, right? They're escaping the lab, and she runs to them at the stairs, and they have this little standoff. None of that caution is in that final scene.
No.
And, I mean, granted, she's probably running on very little sleep and being a rough couple of days, but still, a shame for her to give herself away that quickly. Then again, I don't know how much longer she could have lasted if the idea is that everybody has taken over. What's your take? I know it's impossible to know, but is this centralized to this city, wherever it is?
I don't know. There's ships coming in. Remember, we just had those massive amounts of pods on them and stuff.
Oh, that's right. I get. So it's just worldwide.
I was thinking at the end, it reminded me of the credit scene in the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead, where they make it to this island thinking they're gonna be safe and it's already infested.
Yeah.
I think it was too little, too late. I appreciate their effort to try to hold out, but time had passed. Not before though. Donald Sutherland, old D-Suth, threw a fucking Mike Tyson level uppercut at some random old woman on the street.
That is his most that and when he kills one of his pot people,
Kills himself.
Yeah, his pot self.
That situation had me thinking because he goes to kill Elizabeth, but then he kind of has that moment of like, well, I don't actually know what's going to happen when I do this. So then he pauses and then he bashes his own head in. If you had an evil twin or someone that was going to take over, do you think you could kill yourself if you were looking at yourself?
I think so. I
hope I'm never in that situation, but
I mean, yeah, it's never going to happen. But if it did, I'd be like, well, when else would I get to do this?
You'd be like, Alex, you try killing yours first so I can see what happens.
that scene. I'm surprised I didn't remember that. Did you remember that?
Yeah, no, because it's like that must go back to like my experience with this movie being the edited for television version. Because that particular sequence is without question the most violent thing that happens in the whole movie. Well, fucking like a water balloon filled with like cottage cheese and fake blood and shit.
But the creepiness of the entire sequence, even before he kills himself, just them being born, like the birth of the
grown-ass Donald Sutherland being born
with the hair. I just love that it was the hair.
I now that I think about it, I don't know if it's at all inspired by this, but there's a great Will Ferrell SNL skit from the early 2000s. His name's Ted Brogan, and he looks like Donald Sutherland in this. He has a mustache and kind of that curly hair, and he's born a full-grown man. That's like the thing. He comes out of Rachel Dratch, and he's just like, oh, God, and he's covered in the goo and everything. He's like, it was hot in there.
It was hot in there.
So I don't know if that was all inspired from this because the look is very similar, but my main thing was he must be tired. He's just sleeping through all this. Like if something starts moving near me when I'm sleeping, unless I'm like fucking passed out, I'm like, huh? But he's just,
Well, do you think that the plants were making him sleep, put him in a deeper sleep because he gets
a spell on him?
Well, they get the little, you get the vines wrapping around his hand or something.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I forgot about that.
Get the close up of his eyes.
Ruins.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, I was thinking Evil Dead, which is probably a lot more perverse than the ruins. They put him to sleep, I guess, and that was the one bit of mythology, of lore that I welcomed when they at some point explained that they can't clone you, or at least it seemed to me that they can't clone you unless you're asleep. Mm-hmm. And so they have to stay awake.
What they say when they're all trying to find Donald Sutherland at the end, it's like he can't sleep or he can't stay awake forever. And then the really horrifying part of the little kids being taken into the building, and the one's like, I don't want to take a nap right now. I'm not sleepy. It's like, ugh.
Yeah. As predicted. I would say, as predicted, Jeff Goldblum, first casualty out of our group.
Yep. And he gets put away with he becomes a pod person, but then fucking D-Suth dispenses of him with a half rear naked choke, half dart to like the base of where your spine and your skull connect. So it's pretty fucking metal.
You appreciated the technique of the hold?
Oh yeah. We also that follows right before that. They use Spock as like their vessel of exposition.
Yeah.
Of like, all right, you explain this, and works. It's just.
Do you prefer that they explained this a little bit, or would you have been happier if they hadn't said anything? We're like, we don't know what the fuck is happening. They're just taking over.
I do have a soft spot and like a favor. I'm in favor of movies sometimes, not like walking you by the hand and guiding you through it. At the same time, the way Spock delivers the information, it's so like daunting and so like cold and just so matter of fact that it's like, that's the part in the movie for me where it just sets in that there's no hope, because he just explains like, we came here through, space and time, and we had a situation before that didn't work out. We figured out how to adapt and survive since then, and we're here to do that too. And it's like, oh man, Earth ain't ready for these fuckers, man. So
I
think my closing thought on that is I find that adds to like the dread and like the weight of the situation, as opposed to me just being like, I get it, let's move on here.
Yeah, I think you can see it either way, right? Like either it makes it very clear to you that it's hopeless, uh, or also if you don't have that exposition, what it does is it could potentially ratchet up the anxiety because you don't know what's happening.
Mhm.
It didn't bother me. When it was happening, I was thinking, do we need the explanation? But then, like I said, I was happy that that whole sequence makes it clear that at least they need to sleep, right? And he explains that they transfer the memories because that was something that I was wondering. I was like, are
Yeah.
they just playing it by ear, right? With what's the name of the boyfriend at the beginning, Jeffrey, I think, right?
Uh-huh.
Is he pretending like that he is Jeffrey, but he doesn't know? You know,
They
that's
just
why he
turn
doesn't speak
everyone
much.
into non-playable characters.
Yes,
Just kinda like,
exactly. They have the 5 responses that they rotate with. But apparently not, because Jeff Goldblum talks like Jeff Goldblum. I mean, he seems to have an awareness of his past, his
and then when
relationships.
Elizabeth transforms into her new self, she says, "They were right. It doesn't hurt." Like she's like,
Yeah.
she remembers what they were telling him. So yeah, I could have used Leonard Nimoy being like, "We came from space, the final frontier."
Sutherland goes, "I need my pain." No, that
Yes,
comes later, right?
that comes
That's
later, but
yeah.
Sutherland was like,
Uh,
No, Nimoy's great. I can see what you meant though about the halfway point of hanging on for another minute, where you learn that he's like in on it, and it's like, oh yeah,
yeah, he was a fraud the entire time. What a fucker. Uh, if there's something that doesn't work in this movie for me is the romance suddenly becomes like a big deal at the end.
hmm
And I was like, are you guys really kissing in the middle of this? It just felt weird.
it's hilarious when she's like, "I love you, Matthew," and he's like, "So what are you gonna do to us?" Like he just completely ignores her when she tells him.
I think it works better if they don't have that connection and he remains in love with her without any acknowledgement on her part, because then it's really heartbreaking when she goes and he's holding her and telling her that he loves her, and you're like, oh, he finally
Like the
gets
end
to
of
tell her,
Halloween
and it's too
3.
late. The what?
The end of Halloween 3, when that woman that's 30 years younger than fuck, what's his name? Continue. I'm sorry.
Stop it! Stop it!
Shut it off! Shut it off! Tom Atkins. I know it was Tom
Atkins,
something. I
yes.
didn't want to speak out of turn. When he tells his wife, "Listen, just shut up."
Yeah, no, this movie is better, Alex. This relationship. Okay,
no.
you don't want to go there. You don't want to piss off Halloween fans or Body
It's
Snatcher fans.
yes. I mean, technically speaking, it's a better movie than Halloween 3, but a soft spot for that. Anyway, Donald Sutherland. Yeah, it does kind of. It feels like really sped up. Like it's kind of there the whole time, and then it just like it's like it trips over itself and starts rolling down a hill. Like at the end, with how like quickly it's accelerated.
Are they too old to have that reaction? Maybe, or am I just? Do I have a prejudice against adults giving themselves to just sexual impulses in the middle of such a crisis, right? Because if they were teenagers, I'd be like, yeah, of course, they think they're gonna die, so they go for it. But they're grown.
Yeah, I don't know if I could perform in that level of stress. I could like make out, but I don't know how much farther I could go. I'd be like, I'm gonna die. I have, as I've gotten older, I've started to kind of lighten up in scenarios and movies where I can't possibly imagine how I would react in that situation. So yeah, maybe they're just like, fuck it, tell them I love them while I can. And it wasn't played out at the time, but watching it through 2024 lenses, I couldn't help but laugh that Amazing Grace starts playing on the bagpipes at the end. It's like, it's the way they hear the ships, and it quickly, it doesn't play all the way through. It quickly tapers off, but that's almost like a punchline now.
Yeah. Do you think we knew the ending? Do you think that audiences at the time thought that maybe Donald Sutherland was about to save the day when he starts blowing up their factory, their base of operations? He starts wrecking shit there for a few minutes, and like I knew that there was no point. It was symbolic because they.
Yeah, you remember the time frame you're in. This is Jaws, New Hope era, where they kill Jaws and they blow up the Death Star. So like the big event movies of that time, the movies that invented the idea of the event movies, instilled the thought of, well, yeah, they're going to win. So I'm sure people thought Donald Sutherland was going to break it down and then hijack a ship and start a new civilization or something. So
Yeah.
I imagine at the time, I mean, now we're kind of used to bleak endings in movies, but at the time, I'm sure that the ending of this, one, kept people on the edge of their seat, and two, was like, oh shit. Ian liked it. Roger didn't.
Really?
hmm
Ah.
So I'm sure Gene was on the edge of his seat. Oh, pipe down, Roger.
Roger was like, seen it before. I read the book. This is nothing.
There's no suspense. Why are they in love? I don't understand the camera. Where is the camera, Gene?
I noticed it more on this second half. Or maybe it's because it becomes more pronounced, but just how the camera really starts losing its balance.
Yeah.
I think that every other shot it starts tilting, and it's fine. It works. I mean, it's just like pure madness. There's that whole sequence of Donald Sutherland on the phone with like 20 different people trying to get through to somebody that is not an alien, and that was pretty cool. I reading through the quotes, I realized that there was an angle of this movie that completely went over my head because I was not, sometimes movies just affect you a different way. And we talked about it in the previous segment. For me, the major sense I got was the paranoia. So I was coming at it from the mental health angle of like, maybe it's an alien invasion, or maybe you're going crazy. It could, there's no way of telling. That's the fragility of the human mind. It could seem very obvious to you, and you could be connecting dots that really are not there to be connected. And so the idea that somebody could just have a nervous breakdown and suddenly very vividly imagine an alien invasion, that's not really happening. And then somebody like Leonard Nimoy comes and tells you, no man, look, it's not happening. What really happens is that you don't love your boyfriend anymore. I was like, that's really cool. And I was looking at the movie through those lenses. Now I start reading the quotes, and there's a lot of praise for how this is a commentary against groupthink and the hive mind and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, I guess that is it. And it actually surprised me that it didn't come to mind while I was watching it, because we are in the fucking era of the groupthink online, right? Just like just people that latch on to like one headline or one hashtag or whatever, and that's it. That's all they do. And maybe it is that reality now in the year 2024 is even more outrageous than the idea of like pod people replacing us and creating a hive mind. Like, the hive mind of Twitter is creepier and feels more powerful than the hive mind of the invasion of Body Snatchers. And so that's why I didn't go there.
It's a subsect of our society in our country right now that the hive mind is way more terrifying than invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah, I wonder if that's why I just didn't think of it. Whereas the idea of losing your mind seems like, I don't know, it was something a little more relatable. But did it ever, when you were watching it, did you ever see it that way? Did it ever cross your mind of, oh, this is about individualism fighting against, the hive mind?
Yeah, I mean, that's there. This movie's, if that's what's intended, is very good at being subtle enough to not like overpower the fact that aliens are here and cloning fuckers and their old bodies are rotting away. So it's that's the hallmark of a great movie like this. It is there if you want it, and if not, just crazy fucking movie about an alien invasion. And I need to correct myself. When I was reading quotes earlier, they had one of Roger's quotes listed as a negative, but I did find the screen grab from the actual episode they did in 1978, and they both gave it a thumbs up. So,
okay, so maybe Roger's thumb was not as erect. It was just kind of like,
far be it for the internet to use something out of context,
Yeah, well, that's the problem with quotes. Speaking of which, and just to kind of underline what I was telling you, I did do a screenshot of Adam Naiman's quote from The Ringer. He says, "A decade after the Summer of Love, Invasion of the Body Snatchers essentially weaponized flower power, hinting that the erosion of individual consciousness in favor of groupthink was as natural and ingrained as photosynthesis itself." I think he's reading a little too much into it.
Yep.
But the point stands. I think that it's like you just said, you can see it, and then I think that once you see it, you can maybe just have more fun using that as a filter to watch the movie. I definitely, someday I'll watch this movie again, and I'm going to have that in my head and just sit back and think of Spock's character in particular, like Nimoy's, I think that this very, even watching it now, he seemed kind of like those fake uh, self-help gurus, right? And it makes sense. He seems pretty
Joe
shallow.
Rogan.
God, Rogan wishes.
I'm kidding. Yes, Joe Rogan does fucking wish.
No, but I'm thinking of probably more on the religious side, even though he's not particularly religious in this movie. But you know what I mean? Like somebody that just speaks in platitudes and his insights are not really that deep. And that's what drives Jeff Goldblum crazy. He's like, this guy is full of shit, but he's more successful than me. So I could see that. And I wonder if that is even more highlighted when you're watching it with the idea of like, oh yeah, this guy is just preaching this new age bullshit. And, I mean, I think that you always should strike for a balance between individualism and well, the opposite be embracing community. But the idea that this movie would paint that as a danger, right? It's interesting because you want to have your own ideas. You don't want to subscribe to just whatever the majority is saying, and that's they get back to social media now. Like that seems to be the thing, it's like somebody grabs a meme and then they just retweet it, repost it, whatever, and that becomes their opinion. They stop thinking about what's behind that image, behind that text or whatever. So but anyway, enough of the preaching. Alex, there's a dog with a man's face in this movie.
I forgot about that. That reveal's awesome because they're trying to play it cool and act like they're one of them, and they see that and they're like, ah.
Yeah, I also didn't remember. That's again another thing that I can't believe I didn't remember. Right, the only thing that stuck with me from when I was a kid was Donald Sutherland at the end. Maybe because it was the first time or one of the first times that I watched a movie that had a sad ending where they didn't win, and so maybe that's why it stuck. But I remember I was very young, and I think what happened was my uncle was watching it, and I was kind of like just paying attention in the background, but he knew I was watching, and the thing I remember the most is that after the movie was over, for weeks on end, probably months, it was just this joke where we would just point at each other and do the Sutherland face. We'd be like, oh. So, before the internet, memes were not a thing. You had to create you had to act out the meme.
You had to have real life memes.
Yes.
IRL.
Yeah. But I was very, very happy with the fact that it lived up to my memory of the ending. The worst thing that could have happened was that we got to that Donald Sutherland shot and it just did nothing for me because I built it up in my head so much. But instead it was just as disturbing and sad as I remembered and as I expected. So it was good. I looked it up. I couldn't find a rating from Jamie, who requested this video review. So Jamie, hit us up. I also know that he also asked our friends from the Film Busters to do an episode on it, and I haven't listened to that episode because I wanted to do this fresh-eyed. But I wonder if in that episode he, they expand on his thoughts. But whatever the case, Jamie, let us know what you think of this. I am assuming that you like this movie. It seems to be a movie that film buffs like, and I'm happy to say that I am on with the film buffs in this one. What's your score, Alex?
An A. I think this is really good. Like we called out a few of the things that kind of derailed some of its momentum for me, but that translates to 4, maybe even 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, it wasn't like a first time viewing or anything, but it's been a long time since I'd watched it, especially from cover to cover, and it's a great piece of business. So an A for me. What about you?
4 stars. I'm going with 4 stars. It is it's solid. I can't say that I walk away from it thinking about the world, but I walk away from it thinking about the movie, and I think that that's enough of an achievement. But there's some movies where you walk away and it's like, oh, your entire worldview is shaken and you have to think about life. This is not that, but I walk away and it's like, well, we just have this conversation. We're like, oh, and the movie's doing this and that, and the performance, it's really good. So I recommend anyone who hasn't watched Invasion of the Body Snatchers, watch that. You know what? Do the Body Snatcher challenge with us. Watch all 4 adaptations, read the book, and then we will come together again and rank them all. I can see how this could easily be the best one. So once you've done this, like, what do you do like to improve on it?
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, good luck, Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig. your job cut out for you. But that's it. We're done with Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Not sure what the next QVR is, but just stay tuned. Set your alerts so that you know when we upload a new video. That's it for this one, though. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to the show, and we'll talk to you again soon.
See ya.
That summer of 19